Thank you, Istvan. Thank you also for the invitation and to give me the floor to speak on populism in the European public spheres. Well, first of all, a short presentation. What is FAPS like? Because some knows us as FAPS, others as Foundation for European Progressive Studies. We are think tank, the European think tank established in 2008, together with other European think tanks which are close to their different political movements, but nevertheless independent from their parties. So we are close to the Social Democrats and to the progressive parties. There is the Martin Center, who is close to the EPP, and there are, in the meantime, more than 15 or 16 European foundations, which reflects also a bit the question we are discussing on the question of populism, because there are also a lot of young, small foundations close to all these populist movements, and they get also money from the European Parliament. So this is something which is often not so well known in the public sphere. And for example, the Front National of Marine Le Pen has created two foundations, and two foundations get the sums from the European Parliament because they just split it. And this is a real scandal, I will say, that there is a kind of a lump sum which is given to all of our foundations, and all of a sudden we have two lump sums given to the Front National in France. So this is like democracy sometimes is also functioning within the European Parliament. And here we are in the middle of the debate. I think populism, in a sense, when we talk on populism in the public sphere, populism is both. It's a reaction to, but also a product of the growing distance between the citizens and the institutions of governance. Either it's on the member state, or it's on the state level, either it's on the European level. One can say that all these kind of populist movements, they accuse our European Union, our institutions, of elitism and of remoteness from the everyday lives of the citizens, of the ordinary citizens. And at the member state level, they accuse the politicians of traditional parties of catering the unknown interest of the expense of their own people and of inefficacy in a rapidly changing world. So populists play on fear and are not engaging in a constructive dialogue to help improve our public life. So they try to claim to mantle of democratic participation while posing a most pressing and difficult challenge to democratic institutions. Those who work within the political system, especially the leaders of the political parties and the members of the governments, they have, in my sense or in our sense of FAP, several options at their disposals. Some of those will adopt the so-called copycat tactics, means absorbing some of the language of the populist movements in their own political discourse. This runs for sure the risk of legitimization of such movements and bringing intolerant perspectives into the mainstream. This is one thing. The other thing is, others will speak from a kind of an ivory tower. Ivory tower in a sense, while they're assuming that they know best and that they do not need to look beyond their own milieu, beyond their own classes, yet they try to bring out a bit of elitism, and therefore populism and elitism are the two sides of the same coin. The third possibility is, and I think this is the necessary thing we have to do, is to understand these movements, to look in a way on the conditions that why they are growing so fast in the last years. What is the reason behind? And therefore we need not only to go on the, let's say, not accusing the journalists, but not going on the 24-hour cycle and saying, well, this is this and this is that. No, we have to do a kind of a deep research and also empirical analysis, what is going on in our societies. Only then we can understand what does this mean, this kind of growing of populism and this kind of growing of new nationalist movements. This is the approach we are trying to do at FAPS. We have started research, we have started also publishing on that, we have started to inviting people and we have already published some books and so on. But this is not the case where I would like to present this. I would talk a bit on some of the results of this kind of research we have done. So there is first and foremost one thing, and this was also debated when I just came in, and you, Jean-Paul, you brought this also. This is this so-called values debate. Well, the values debate, in a sense, is this a debate which is of interest for our citizens or not? For sure, we are convinced Europeans. We say, well, we have to defend our values. We have to fight for our values. We have to go on manifestations. You mentioned this also. But on the other side, is there really amongst the citizens this question of the values, and is there also amongst the political leaders within our European Union this sense of the European values? An example where sometimes this is threatened, we are all talking on one of the core values of the European Union, which is solidarity. Well, if you look at the moment what is going on when we are talking on the question of the migrants, is there really solidarity within Europe? I'm wondering this a bit. Is this really the case when we are talking, as it was proposed by lots of, not only from our side, but from all the political sphere, this kind of resettlement schemes, that there is a solidarity within the European Union, that the migrants coming to Europe are not only migrants, they have to claim their asylum in Italy where they are stranding, or they are going then in a sense illegally to other countries like Germany, Sweden and Great Britain. And in a lot of other member state countries of the European Union, they even refuse to take part in this kind of real problem which is existing. So is this a point? And this gives also room of maneuver for the populist movement to grow. Second thing is the question of the way how some of our political parties are functioning at the moment, and this growing distance between the citizens and the political parties, because we all live still, and fortunately I will say, in a representative democracy. So is it not so that we have to do a lot of research and analysis also in the way how our political parties are functioning? Lots of the political parties are becoming just kind of election machines. They are just functioning in the way when there is a national election or when there is a regional election, and they are presenting a candidate. Some of these parties are also lacking a very close relationship to the citizens. I'm always saying, I know a lot of parties within Europe, they are still functioning as they have functioned when they have been created end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. If you look, for example, how candidates are chosen to be representative within the parliaments and on the list or so, sometimes it's a question which is not very clear how somebody can become a candidate, for example, for the European Parliament or for the national parliament. Sometimes it's something behind closed doors always said, and this is giving a chance for growing distance between the citizens and the institutions, and also for growing the populist movement. Thirdly, parties, in a sense, if you take the case of the European parties, when we are talking also on the engagement of the younger generations, for example, towards the political engagement towards the European Union, I don't know, and I don't think so that this is the case, but in our family, in the Social Democratic family, I cannot become member of the Party of European Socialists. It's not possible. Because there is this thing that you are automatically member of the Party of European Socialists when you are member of a national party. So what is happening, I think we have now also a kind of a new European forced citizens or so, who would perhaps not become member of a national party, but would like to engage in a European party to enhance more or less the kind of the engagement on the European level. It's not possible. It's simply not possible. Same goes for the youth movement. If you would like to become a kind of engaged young member of a European political party movement, you can't become member of the European level. You have to go through the national level. But I presume that, for example, here in Brussels, there are let's say at least 10,000 or 15,000 people living who have relationship for sure with their national political sphere, but perhaps would like to be much more engaged in a kind of a European debate, and they cannot become members. So I think this is also something we have to consider, the way how our representation is done, for example, here in the European Parliament. If you have a situation that we have still now not any possibility of any transnational list when you're going to the European elections. It's not possible. You have only national lists, and in some of the countries it's even so regionalized that somebody who is, for example, elected in north of France has nothing to do with somebody who is on a list in the south of France. So there is a totally disconnection on that issue. So this is something I think, if you talk on the public debate and the public sphere, something very, very necessary to rethink. The question of membership in European parties, and the question also in which way in Europe the European Parliament is elected without any possibility of have any transnational list. Thirdly, if you talk on the question why there is a growing kind of tendency for populist parties, well, this has also, I think, something to do with the question of the economic policies and the question of the economic crisis we are living at the moment. Take the case, I'm German. Take the case, today there was a publication in Germany about the unemployment rate. This is the lowest unemployment rate since the unification in 1990. So we have at the moment in Germany 2.7 million unemployed people. Do we have high populist parties in Germany? No. We had a movement called Alternative für Deutschland, which is now more or less deluded because they are fighting with them itself. We had, unfortunately, also at the beginning of this year, this terrible Pegida movement, but also they have not really succeeded in a way. I will not neglect there is not a kind of a tendency also in Germany, but we have a lot of these kind of growing populist parties in countries where we have a real threat concerning the economic problems of the society. And often our parties, from our family I will say, are not in a sense giving a real alternative. What is an alternative policy to that what is normally the mainstream consensus amongst, let's say, the conservatives and the liberal parties. So if you take, for example, the case in Britain, Labour Party has lost the elections recently on the national level. They have brought in some of the elements of the austerity policies. So citizens would say, well, why I should vote for Labour? I can also vote for the Tories because more or less they are doing the same policies. They have also introduced kind of slogan, we have to talk on limitations on migration. So why I should vote for them if they have assured me at least something. So this is also a question of presenting clear alternatives to the citizens. And last but not least, what I would like to bring in before we go in the debate, there is one thing which is very essential at the moment in the political debate in the public sphere. This is the question how to engage young people in politics. If you look at the election results in a lot of the member state countries, the attitudes and the behaviors of the young people are totally different on that what happened 20 or 30 or 40 years ago when the European Union was created. So they're engaged in politics. They're engaged in a sense what is going on, but they are not engaged in being members of movements within the political spheres. That's why we have at FAPS thought that we should do something in that sense, and we have started an initiative, a project called the Millennium Project, and doing online surveys all over Europe, but also not only in Europe, but also transatlantic, in looking what is the behavior of this millennial generation, the generation between 15 and 35. So we have so far, I think there are some copies here of the first result. We have so far done studies in Germany, in Italy, in Poland, in Hungary. At the moment there is something going on in Bulgaria. We have done one in the UK and in the US and in Canada. And what is the first result of that? It's the disengagement of this generation from the established political system. This is the point which is frightening. The established political system. Young people do not engage anymore in the current political system. And this is also a tendency for the growing populism and for the growing populist movement. This is something we have to consider very, very seriously when we talk on what is going on within the European Union. This is more or less what I would like to say as an introduction to our debate. The concern of the values within our political debate, the concern of how our political parties, which are the representative of our political system, are functioning, and the concern also, the third point, on in which way we can engage much more the younger generation. For example, just to let you know, give you a figure as a last argument. In the last federal elections in Germany, for the SPD, which was the party who has had the utmost of the younger generations at the time, from the Millennium generation, only 12% voted for the Social Democratic Party. So it was a time when the Millennium generation, or the young generation, I will say, voted with over 50% and 60% for the Social Democratic Party. So there is something which is going wrong, and we have to work on that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.